Good morning, Matt.
Morning. How are you?
How you doing, buddy? All right?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, yourself?
Yeah, living the dream.
Cool. And what is the dream?
What is the dream, buddy? The dream is to be healthy and to be here,
Yeah,
to be happy and teaching martial arts, and
lovely.
all is good, bud.
Oh,
All,
great. Good.
so I'm hoping that the Eid is tomorrow and Ramadan will finish today as well.
Yeah.
So, that's the dream as well.
Fair enough.
I
Yeah,
was speaking to Tracy, my wife, this morning, and just saying that recording the podcast, it's just not the same without a coffee.
I
And,
bet. Yeah, I bet it's well hard. You
yeah,
must
but
feel like,
this month has went really, really quickly, actually, which is
right.
good. It
Yeah.
usually does. It usually does, but I think I'm getting old as well, buddy. I think that's what the problem is.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It
How's
it
things?
happens, dude. Yeah, good, thank you. Doing the online stuff, helping instructors set up their platforms and do all of that sort of thing, and back
Brilliant.
in seminars. So that's quite nice. So yeah, it's all kind of returning to normal-ish.
Well, uh, uh, I keep saying last year and forgetting that last year was a complete write-off, but
Yeah,
we had you booked to come back to our school last year actually, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
obviously everything happened. But we need to get that,
Okay, thank you. That'd be
organised.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Okay, so we're joined by the Mitt Master this morning, Matt Chapman, and really looking forward as always to this conversation. If you'll allow, I'm going to ambush you straight away this morning.
Oh, great.
Right? Uh, but obviously, this is a tongue-in-cheek question to
Yeah, yeah.
start us off, and you'll be an absolute samurai at answering this one. So, what I'll say to start us off is that digital and online training doesn't work. So,
Okay.
right. So now, my opinion has really changed on this,
Yeah,
uh, as in dramatically changed on this. But an expert like you, and for the people that are still saying this, what's your answer to that one? Straight off the bat.
yeah. I think the last year has proven to most martial arts instructors that you can do a fairly good job teaching digitally. But here's the honest truth: it's not a replacement for a physical one-on-one experience with an instructor. It's never going to be a replacement for that. That's the best training you can ever get in a
Yeah.
dojo with an instructor training one-on-one. You can't get any better than that. But when there's a pandemic and your school's shut and you're not allowed to teach, what are you going to do? How are you going to support your students? How are you going to help them continue to grow and develop? How are you going to keep your retention up?
Yep.
You haven't got a choice. It's digital. So the pandemic was like a wake-up call, I think, for the whole industry that, I've had it for years. I've been teaching people about digital content for literally the last 5 years, and loads of people have said to me, oh, digital's rubbish. You can't teach online. You can never learn martial arts online. And the very same people who said that were suddenly doing Zoom classes and recording. I was like, what happened there? So look, it's not a replacement for physical training. It's a support to physical training. It helps, those times when you can't necessarily get to a dojo, or there's a pandemic, or your student's injured, or you're ill, or if you've got to take care of a family member.
Yeah.
That can be taken care of during with online. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why people have such a problem with it. I think it's because it's maybe it feels like that it might be that they're not confident enough to do the whole creating and teaching online. It's a different set of skills. You have to have some tech skills. You have to be quite good at presenting to camera, which is different than presenting to a class.
Yeah.
So it might be that they just feel a bit intimidated by the whole thing and just want to push it away. But I think the one positive of the pandemic is it's just forced all these instructors to just get onto digital, find out it's not so terrifying, find out it's actually quite good, find out that students are enjoying it, and take it from there.
I was one of these guys that you were talking about. No, I was, and I've said this publicly, and I've said it to a lot of my students. Maybe that's something we can investigate as to why using me as an example, why I was so against it, and it's probably for the same reasons that a lot of people were against it. But I found that Okay, let me talk you through our timeline. We had to obviously close down classes March time 2020, the same as everybody else. And I remember standing with a large group of the parents and saying, listen, guys, we really have to make a decision now. We're going to close down physical classes. We'll try and do something. We didn't really know what that was going to be at the time. And I don't mind saying this, I was kind of thinking we'd be away for 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
That's what was in my head.
Yeah, it will all blow over. It will be all right. Yeah.
Yep. And I don't, looking back now, that seems ridiculous because of what we've went through, but I genuinely thought that's what it'd be. Anyway, so I thought, right, I'll do some live Facebook feeds. So we started off with that in the private group, and that was going really well. Recording from my house, and then one of my sort of friends and sort of senior students said to me, "Like you're doing amazing at that. Like the effort you're putting into class to try and, because you don't know who's there. Obviously, you're just teaching to a screen."
Yeah.
And he said, "Like you're putting so much effort in," and he said, "But I bet you half the people are just sitting there with like a packet of crisps."
He's got a good point. He's got a good point. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then one of my other students said, "Listen, I think you're missing a trick because a lot of people have moved on to Zoom already." Now, that's when it changed for me, because having really missing students and really missing teaching, see, as soon as I could see someone on the other end of that screen, it was night and day. It was a real big change.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And then I found that people were actually starting to get better. We weren't doing as much content. Say, let's say we would work on 20 techniques just for talk's sake in a physical class. We worked in 7 or 8, but then they started getting really good at those techniques because we were focused. So I've changed completely. I think the question there is that through your experience, what have you heard people say? What's been the turning point to change that attitude?
Well, there's 2 things that change people: inspiration or desperation, I think.
Okay.
To be honest, they're either inspired to change or they're desperate, and it's pain that forces them to change. So I think the only thing that really changed for martial arts instructors was they got desperate.
Yeah.
That was it. They couldn't teach physical classes. What can we do? Oh, right, we'll jump on Facebook and do some classes. That's not working because maybe you don't get the interaction. Yeah. So let's try Zoom. Oh, that's working quite well. We can see the students. There's that energy between you going on. So I think the desperation forced them to all suddenly learn all this online stuff about, like cameras, lighting, editing, audio, uploading it to different platforms. Desperation raised the whole industry. So it's sad that it had to come to that, but that's the reality. People wouldn't have done it if the pandemic had come along. I've been talking about it for years and years and years, and I'd run workshops and I'd get like 5 or 6 people on it, and run another one next month, get 4 free on it, and it was like just a few people. And as soon as the pandemic hit and everything got locked down, I was getting inquiries just non-stop for the whole first lockdown, number 1.
Yep.
I was non-stop working. I was not resting. I was helping instructors set up online platforms. I was advising them on what cameras to choose. I was doing stuff on training them on how to use Zoom. It just went crazy. So sadly, it took that kind of terrible sort of pandemic to force martial arts instructors to change. The thing I'm worried about, though, is I think now it's getting back to normal, and it's almost normal. I think they're going to forget about the digital and the online and go, phew, that's over. We won't need to do that again. And the danger is, because the precedent has been set now with lockdowns and, shutting down whole entire countries, if not the world, what happens if the next coronavirus is more deadly and to different age groups? What do people think is going to happen then? The same thing's going to happen, but probably more intensely and for a longer period of time. So I think instructors shouldn't take their foot off the pedal as far as it goes to the online. They should keep doing the odd online Zoom class once a week just to keep their hand in on presenting online. They should research the latest platforms they can be using to share their content. They should be setting up their YouTube channel. They should be pre-recording their syllabus so that they can distribute it to their students if they need to shut down. They should use their recordings of the last year's worth of Zooms and edit those and put them into a platform so that if stuff happens again, they can just use the same content. But I know what, being a martial arts instructor, I know what they're like. They're just gonna go, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not desperate enough yet.
When we had already, I never doubted the I'll be honest with you, I never doubted the sense that you've always been, you've always spoke. I never ever doubted that. It was more of a personal thing. And I'm happy enough to absolutely come back and say, yeah, you were right, because I was one of these ones that was like, I'll be honest, sort of looked down on it, and I got desperate, and that's, you're spot on. And it was desperate because okay, here's the way I seen it. I seen it that I have a responsibility towards my students. I have a responsibility to keep that relationship and offer them a way through this pandemic. One of the biggest compliments I've had, and I think many of us would have had, is that, and especially from parents who've come back and said, listen, you've been the only consistent thing.
Yeah.
My child over a year. What an amazing compliment. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And lots of other instructors have said the same thing, you know, because the other clubs that they might be doing, the school work, you know, it all kind of dropped down a little bit. But, you know, the weekly martial arts class was just bang on every single week, you know. And the good thing is it forced instructors to get creative about how they can teach the same stuff, because there's no holding pads necessarily, there's no bag work, you can't use any equipment. So how are you going to teach, you know, a 4-year-old front kicks for 45 minutes? How are you going to make it interesting and exciting? So it elevated instructors, it elevated their technical skills, but also elevated their instructional ability. And teaching to like a camera, and like you say, on Facebook Live, it's even worse because you just get nothing back. It's you teaching. So then you get self-conscious, you think, is anyone paying attention? You start messing up your words. So I think it was needed. It's very sad that it took this terrible thing for it to happen, but it's improved the industry in the long run.
I think that's spot on as well, and that's something that I've spoken about too. Just I think a tip I would give to any martial arts instructor starting out is to get, and I don't think it's a cheat. I think it's something that is required, is to learn how to hide repetition within class. And taking a front kick, for example, if you have to work on a front kick for 30 minutes, there's so many different variations you can do. Step in, let's go around the different angles, use different legs, etc., etc. But I would say, having a year where I haven't been in contact with my students, I'm a better instructor now than what I was, for everything you've just said there.
Yeah.
It was hard work.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and also, you know, the online, like I said, online is not a replacement for physical classes, and you can get a certain amount of, you can watch the students in the Zoom, but you can't like get in there and correct their technique and move their body. So you have to get better at communicating the exact words that you need to say in order for a student to get it via an online thing. So it just refines your communication skills. It makes you a better communicator. You can just tell people what to do, and they don't necessarily, you know, they get it. In the previous, you know, before that, we'd probably have to, if I was teaching for jiu-jitsu, for example, on the ground, I would actually kind of grab the person's arm and move it. So this is what you need to do. You need to put yourself here and put your foot here, grab their foot, bring the arm across. But none of that with the online. So you have to be very specific in the details you get, and that improves your skill and communication skills as an instructor. So yeah, another positive from a very, very negative situation.
No, for sure. I think again, another really interesting point you've raised there. Like, I won't say that, and again, anything I say about any instructors today, I'm absolutely 100% including myself in that. Is it perhaps, it's not lazy teaching, but just like you've said there, like, I think the student understands better when you can verbalize it sometimes and they have to think about the technique. Because how often do you just walk by a student and move their arm?
Yeah.
It's just natural. You just, now your arm should be here.
Yeah.
I don't know if the student goes away and actually thinks about, well, why should it be here? Or
Yeah.
whereas if you're on Zoom and you're having to say, listen, your arm has to be at such and such angle. Here's the reason why. They're already getting more information. So I think the people that did run with it, I think will come out of this definitely as better instructors as well.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I know a lot of people quit on it though. They stopped doing the Zoom, stopped doing, and that's partially due to they didn't frame it right with their students. So a lot of them, a lot of instructors kind of went to their students and said, we're going to have to be shut. We're going to try this online stuff. Don't know if it's going to work. You know, it's not going to be as good as class. You know, turn up if you want. So they came at it with really negative point of view and put that on their students. So then they wonder why their students weren't turning up for the Zoom classes, because they were like, it's not as good. It's not going to be as good. It can never replace it. So turn up if you want. Whereas I think the instructors who did the best were the ones like, you know, we're having to close, but I'm super excited that, you know, now we've got this online technology that allows me to teach and come into your home and teach you. We'll have all the recordings of it. I can go into a lot more detail. I can see your technique and correct your technique. So I think it's how you frame it to the student made a difference. And the ones who framed it positively and really were creative in how they taught and a lot of variety and were energized and infused to teach on Zoom did better than the ones who were kind of like, oh, this sucks. I hate Zoom.
Yeah.
So
that now again, listen, cards on the table. That was me for the first 2 or 3 weeks when I was just using Facebook.
right.
I think if you remember, well, again, obviously you're down south and it's the weathers and stuff's generally a wee bit better. But up here, it was like glorious weather for the first few weeks.
Yeah.
That actually carried on, and that was a bit of a blessing as well. But we just done Facebook, but I was setting challenges straight away for like my juniors, like have mum video you doing sort of certain jumping kicks in the garden and doing this. And we started to build an online community sort of straight away. But in my heart, I was kind of like, I'm missing being there. But then, as I said, as soon as Zoom kicked in, I really came to it with like a lot of energy, and that came across. See, the way both of us are, the way I'm recording the podcast today, both of us are on the screen, and that's how it'll appear on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm mentioning that is a lot of the students had it on speaker view, so it was only me on the screen.
Yes.
So there could have been 30 or 40 students in class, but a few of them come back and said it was like getting twice weekly one-to-ones because
perfect.
They weren't focusing on these other screens that I could see.
Yeah.
Just my ugly mush. Like, and they said it was like getting a one-to-one. It was, I could just focus on you. I wasn't focusing on anybody else. That's all brilliant stuff.
It is, yeah. It's that one, like obviously the best way to learn martial arts is one-to-one with your instructor. That's you know, because you just get their personal attention, you get the improvement. Now you can set it up on Zoom so it feels like that. You know, you can feel like you're teaching directly to that person, but there's 30, 50, 100 people on at the same time, but they all feel like they've got that personal touch with you. You know, that's one of the powerful things about online. It allows you to reach multiples of people, which is maybe not physically possible, especially during a lockdown, but also, you know, martial arts businesses are local businesses. We're in our local towns, and that is the extent of the people that we can influence, help, and, you know, have a positive impact on their lives. But what if you could do that like regionally in your region? What if you could do that in your country? What if you could do that in your, you know, in the world? You could teach people around the world. And that's why I set up my online business, because I thought I had stuff that was valuable that people seem to enjoy. But what if you live in America, Canada, Australia, Italy? You know, how you can't come to my school to train with me. So my goal was always to help as many people as possible and to improve the level of pad holding for instructors. So therefore, I made it a global thing. So now I have students in like a couple of hundred, you know, places around the world, and it's all over the place now, which is really, really good. I get to help more people. People can benefit from it in different places. You know, I've had emails from people who are like in Brazil, and there's no one who's teaching sort of the stuff where they are in Brazil. So the only access they get to online training is YouTube and things like that. But the problem with going to YouTube is you get random videos from one instructor, then a different instructor. You don't get any cohesion. It's not very systematized and organized. So the idea is they learn my stuff. They've got a nice complete system on how to hold pads for different martial arts. So I think the good thing about this whole situation is it's made instructors realize that, hey, maybe teaching online isn't as sucky as I thought it was going to be. You've probably done enough of it so that your confidence and speaking to camera is there. Because I remember the first time I was on camera, I was stumbling and making mistakes and getting, you know, confused with what I was saying. But with practice, you get better and better. Yeah. So I think the next stage for a lot of instructors is, well, why can't you teach what you teach in your school to people all around your country, or possibly all around, you know, the world? I mean, why not? It's just a. But I think fear is the main reason that holds a lot of people back from that. They're scared of the technology, but if they can use Zoom and stuff, they can already teach online and they've got the tech that they need. It's very simple nowadays. But I think it's more of the fear of other people saying mean things about them and imposter syndrome, the feeling like they're not good enough to have a global presence, that they should stay small and just stay in their town and teach in their town, and that's okay. But for them to get known in their country or the world intimidates them because they don't feel like they're good enough, which is interesting for me, because I'm like, well, you know, if you're good enough to teach people in your town, why are you not good enough to teach people in the town next to it, and the town next to that, and the town next to that, or in your country? So it's kind of interesting.
The reason why I got a bit animated there was when you said imposter syndrome, that was exactly the next thing I was going to say to you. Like, it's so, and again, let's sort of talk about that for a wee second. You did touch on it there, but again, the way you've put it is really, really clear. If you have someone, I mean, I certainly do have students who travel to my school from a different town. How's that different online? How's it different 5 towns away?
Exactly.
Or then a country away, or a continent away, or it's
exactly.
It's no different.
It's no different, but it's different in the instructor's head. So I think a lot of instructors have that imposter syndrome, and also they think that maybe they believe they need to be the best. But the problem with believing that you need to be the very best to teach online or to teach on a global scale is there's only ever one best. The best judoka in the world is one person at that weight. The best karateka is one person at that weight. The best MMA fighter is one person at that weight. So that's ridiculous. You don't have to be the very, very best. And also, frequently, the very best technical fighter competitor is not the best coach or instructor. Sometimes they have these natural innate talents that they can't teach and they can't present. And also, to be a high level competitor and to be the best, you have to be incredibly selfish. You don't really care about the people down below you, and you don't care about sharing and teaching and coaching and helping people along the way. You have to be incredibly self-centered and focused on what you want to achieve and your goals. So I think instructors need to realize that if they like teaching, they like helping people, they like developing people, why not just do it globally? It doesn't, you can just teach in your own town, but why not expand your influence? And also from a business personal perspective, if you have a school in your own town, you're limited by the amount of students that you can get in that town. Your business is limited. Your ability to make income and support your family is limited because you can only fit so many people in your dojo. You only have so many hours in a day to teach. you only have so many people in your town who are interested in martial arts.
Yep.
That's it. It's limited. You know, you can't grow past that. So the only way to grow past that is then either to get into franchising, which is a lot of work, you know, setting up franchise models, finding franchisees, monitoring management, or online is the other way of doing it, because then what you essentially do when you teach online is you make copies of yourself that go out and teach all over the world, but they don't need managing, they don't need a franchise fee, they're not going to have a tantrum. They're just carbon copies of you that go around and can teach in Brazil and can teach in India, can teach in, you know, the United States, and it's you. So you get to brand yourself and you get to known as the expert. So for me, it was a no-brainer, because I was running a full-time martial arts school for 19 years with my mate, but I was like, this can't get any bigger. Like we can't do any more than we're doing because we're stuck in this space. And I am awful at managing people. So I'm like old school. I told you what to do. Why haven't you done it? like there's no emotional stuff. And hey, you all right? How's it going? So my management skills are really bad. So I realized either I needed to upgrade my management skills in order to create, you know, affiliate schools or satellites or franchise. But that seemed like a lot of effort. Or I could basically create copies of myself and distribute them on the web. I decided to do that. It took a long time to grow and build, but now it's going really, really well.
Yeah, that's the next thing that I want to ask you about. One thing I'll say before then, but just to jump back onto that imposter syndrome and having lack of confidence, we're in a world where maybe people are scared to do it because of the feedback they'll get, but we're in a world where somebody sits on their couch with a pizza and a beer and tells Floyd Mayweather that he shouldn't fight with his left.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like,
that's a great example. I love that. You're so right. But I'm going to call instructors on this. I'm going to give them a bit of a, you know, telling off.
Yeah.
We're meant to be in a system art style that's meant to develop self-confidence and ability to believe in yourself and, you know, to help people. So that whole thing of, you know, I don't want to put stuff out there because people say mean things about, you know, and it's happened to me hundreds of times that people have said, this is rubbish, that's rubbish, your pad work's awful, you don't know what you're doing. But I don't know, I've got self-confidence, self-esteem that I know that my message, what I create helps some people. It won't help everyone, but there's a, you know, I've got about 10,000 people who are accessing my content around the world. So it's helping people. Might not be for them, but why would I let what, you know, the person on the sofa eating a pizza, drinking a beer, why would I let what they say affect my self-confidence and affect my belief in myself and affect the good I could do in helping people around the world with my training? Why would I let them stop me? To me, it doesn't make any sense. But I'm quite thick-skinned. Things that people say online doesn't bother me. But I know a lot of instructors who are like, oh, so and so said my technique was rubbish, I'm never putting anything out again. And I kind of get it, I understand, but I also don't understand. You know, this is part of my lack of empathy management problem that I have. Like, you want to do more and you want to, you know, share what you love with the world, but you're letting people who, one, don't know you, have never met you, have never trained with you, stop that just by writing a little comment on a YouTube video. It's madness to me. I mean, I don't understand.
I think it's a lot to do with human nature, of course. That the other great example I've got is I'm a huge fan of Liam Harrison. I talk about Liam Harrison quite often, and you'll give people saying to Liam Harrison, "Oh, you're dropping your hand when you're throwing that leg kick." Sorry, like the guy's get probably some of the best leg kicks ever, and you're telling him he's dropping his guard.
Yeah.
And then if you go into Liam Harrison's page, you'll start chasing these guys or no, stop, just stop right there. Like, so
I think he probably, because he seems like a guy who enjoys a lot of banter, so I think he probably enjoys people criticizing him so he can jump in and have a go at them. But yeah, all right, you stand in front of Liam Harrison and let him kick you, and then you decide, right, whether, but will people do that? Of course they won't. So it's ridiculous.
if people are criticising Floyd Mayweather and Liam
Yes.
Harrison, they should be able to criticise me, and I just let it wash over me, and then I got on with it. That's
it's so easy now just to ban and delete people. You know, someone says something sarky, you can delete the comment, you can ban them from your page. You never have to hear from them again. So why would you let it like get into your heart? And part of the reason is I think many martial arts instructors are quite sensitive to bullying. Because if you think about why someone would start martial arts, it's because they're missing something in their life, whether it's they're missing self-confidence or they're missing the ability to defend themselves, or that there's some element that's missing, so they've gone to martial arts to get that. And I think a lot of martial arts instructors start martial arts because of lack of self-esteem / bullying. And then they get what they call triggered. They get triggered by the comments that are put up years, decades down the line, when they're really strong, really fit, really, and then someone says your technique's awful, and it kind of hurts because that weakness is still there. So I think that's probably why it affects so many people. I just think it's hilariously funny. I just love some of the things people have said about me. It's just some of them I can't repeat because they're just too rude. But they just crack me up. I'm just like, oh, that's such a good insult, and then I ban and delete them.
Fine. Right. Okay. So the next week conversation, I think, will be so valuable to people, and I also want to double back again to talk about your actual. I'll give you a chance to talk about, your actual process of helping people as well online. But I think what's really valuable is if we hear about your giving up one path just because, as I know, you got to a stage where you were sort of physically and mentally exhausted, but then chasing this other dream. I've got a friend who was a bank manager, and she was the youngest ever person promoted to manager for, it was either the Royal Bank of Scotland or the Bank of Scotland. And she was driving to work one day, and she just knew it wasn't what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
She literally just, I may be over dramatizing this slightly, but turned the
car around,
turned the car around and quit. For all intents and purposes, she did. She just gave it up and then started another business and then sold it for a crazy amount of money.
Wow. Cool.
Just because she said she had that leverage, she quit and then she had to do her stuff. So let's go back to your story and tell us a wee bit about, obviously, your actual journey as a student, then into having your full-time school, and then giving that up. I mean, that's my dream, to have a full-time school, and you're going to talk me out of it here.
No.
Like you gave that up, but then you've moved into this amazing stuff that you're doing now. So,
thank you. Well, started martial arts when I was 10, 11 with ninjutsu in my local town, because I saw Enter the Dragon, and I was like, oh, got to do that. That's just it. Yep. So that was it. As soon as I saw Bruce Lee doing his thing, I was like, martial arts. But there was no kung fu at the time in my town, so I started with ninjutsu. I did that for a decade. Got to black belt in that. Really enjoyed that. That was fun. Lots of crazy stuff in ninjutsu that is not in normal martial arts, such as riding a horse while shooting a bow and arrow, like just crazy stuff, which when you're 11 or 12 is just like so cool. The throwing stars, climbing trees, learning how to break and enter stuff, like just James Bond stuff when you're a kid. So I did that.
Be invisible?
Trying to be invisible, but it wasn't as easy as you might believe. So I did that for a decade. That was cool. And then what happened was a karateka came to our school and he wanted to spar, and he just beat me up. And I was like, oh, that sucks. He was a brown belt, I think, at the time. And I was like, oh, then I started getting interested in more functional fighting, sparring skills, because that's not necessarily, or wasn't for me, ninjutsu strength. So started learning kickboxing with a really cool kickboxing instructor in my local town, who then recommended a JKD / a screamer instructor. And then Anton St. James, his name is, and I spent that next decade training daily with him in eskrima, Filipino martial arts, Jeet Kune Do, and Muay Thai. So that was a decade training with him. And then Bob Breen, who was in London at the time, was the kind of godfather of JKD in Europe.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I've got to go and train with Bob. So I went to university, kind of did a degree half-assed, mainly just to train with Bob. So, you know, the excuse to going to London was to get a degree, but the real reason I was there to train with Bob. So then spent 3 to 5 years training at Bob Breen's Academy in Hoxton. Loved that. When I was there, I met Eric Paulson, who is one of the first MMA fighters. He was doing bare knuckle MMA back in the day. He was the first person I met who could mix striking, grappling, wrestling fluidly with no gaps. So I was like, ooh.
Yep.
Went out to America to train with Eric several times, became an instructor in his system, and then started competing in MMA. Did MMA for a few years, won a British title in MMA, but didn't really enjoy fighting. It wasn't my passion. My passion is teaching and helping people.
Yeah.
So I used to fight, win fights, and be like, there's no emotional response. I didn't get excited. I wasn't like, I was just relieved that I'd won the fight and that my opponent was all right, and that was it. So quit MMA because it wasn't really my passion, and then opened a full-time school with my mate James, which we ran for 19 years together. And the problem was running a full-time school because, one, I'm a terrible manager. It's not my skill set. So there's all sorts of issues with staff and stuff that came to a head. Second, I was doing too many private lessons. So I was doing like 5 or 6 hours of private lessons, but these weren't like telling people what to do. These were training MMA fighters. So a lot of pad work, a lot of clinch work, a lot of sparring, a lot of ground and pound. So my body is getting dinged up and bashed by all these young kids who wanted to fight. Then after my privates, I would do kids classes, which I hated teaching. So that was stressful because I don't like teaching kids. They just do my head in. Because mainly I found teaching kids, I was just trying to herd like cats. It was hard work managing the kids and controlling their behavior. And so didn't enjoy that. So I was getting beaten up in the day. Then I was teaching kids, which I didn't enjoy. And then I'd had the adults classes, which I used to love teaching. But that's a long day of stuff that's going on. Plus doing the admin for the school and the organization, the marketing and all that. And basically after about 19 years of doing this, I was, 40 years old and burnt out by that point.
I'm 40 next year.
It's all right when you're training fighters when you're young, but when you get older and older, the injuries, they accidentally elbow you in the head and then your jaw hurts for a week. They kick the pad wrong and your finger hurts for 2 weeks. They take you down and land on your neck and you can't move your arm properly. So it all came to a head where I was like, I'm falling out of love with martial arts, which is not, something I'd never want to do because it's been my whole life since I was 10. What do I do about this? Because I can't keep this pace up. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep teaching the kids. So made some changes, got staff members in to teach the kids. No more kids classes. Hooray! Started to drop some of the privates with the fighters and just took on some different types of students who weren't necessarily fighters. So I wasn't getting beaten up so much. Chose the classes I was teaching, and then I had a bit of free time and I was like feeling a bit better energy. So then I had a passion for pad training. My thing I love most is pad training and sparring. And I was like, I wonder if anyone like online would be interested in seeing some of my pad drills because I've been developing them for 20 years. So I put some videos on YouTube and most people said nice things and a few, also said not nice things. Delete, problem solved. And I was kind of enjoying the process of creating stuff and sharing it and getting response and feedback and then creating new stuff and sharing it. And it's just kind of organically built. And, I started creating online products, which I would then sell like online courses. And for the first year, I sold 0 courses, like 0, like no one bought any of my courses online, which is interesting to me because now I run quite a big business teaching online courses. But for that first year, 0, nothing. But martial arts teaches you about perseverance, continuing through, overcoming obstacles, confidence, belief in yourself. So I just kept on pushing out content. And, I made my first sale, which was for like £7.99. I was like, whoop, I'm in. So I just kept pushing content, kept creating content, kept sharing it, kept, moving things forward. And over a period of several years, it started to increase. And about after 3 years of running the online business, I was making as much from my online business as I was making from my full-time school of 400 members.
Wow. Okay.
So then I was like, ooh, like, what do I do? Do I, you know, I could keep both going, but I kind of feel like I've done the whole teaching a martial arts school thing for 20 years. I was enjoying it at that point because I'd organized myself better and got rid of the kids' classes and, you know, got rid of some of the privates, had more free time. But I felt like I could offer more to martial artists around the world by focusing on the online. Because obviously it's great for my students, teaching my 400 students, but there's 10,000 people in my online database at the moment that I'm currently helping. And that felt like, to me at that time, just more interesting, more challenging, more rewarding. So I woke up one day and I was like, right, I'm done. Like the lady driving the car to the bank, turn my car around. I said to my business partner, yeah, I'm going to move on and just do the online. He was like, okay, cool. So I sold my half of the business to him. So he continues to run the business, which is doing really, really well. And I went off into the online world and tried to do my best there. So that's the journey from the last 30 odd years.
The where I've changed and just listening to you speak there, especially towards the end when the part about it's that fulfillment of or comparing that from teaching at a full-time school and what credence do we give to this online stuff? What sort of what respect do we give in it? Or when having done nothing compared to what you've done, just same as all the instructors that have done it, but having utilised a very small part of it for a year, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, my opinion has changed, and I'm actually sitting here thinking it's now wonderful what you've done there. I'm now sitting thinking you reaching these people, teaching these people is just as legitimate as the person that stands in my school. And I know we said it doesn't compare fully, but I don't know you'll ever know. I think you're just changing people's lives the same way I'm changing people's lives in a dojang or a dojo. My opinion on that has really, really changed having come through it. It must be satisfying to you have so many people now getting something from what you're doing. It must be.
Yeah, it is really satisfying. And the good thing about the online as opposed to a physical school is you kind of, I don't know if this is the right word, probably not. You don't waste your time in the sense that sometimes I've had students come to the school and they're so talented.
Yeah.
They've got, you know, they've just got flexibility and strength and explosiveness. And I'm like, wow, you could be really amazing at martial arts. And you teach them and you give them your energy and you give them your love and you try and help them out. And then they quit because, you know, they split up with a girlfriend or they can't be bothered anymore, or they're going to take up motocross, or it's not for them, or they get punched on the nose and they don't like it. So we as instructors like invest so much in students, and we've all had it, you know, star students quit, and, you know, students quit and take students with them, and instructors quit, and all of the fun stuff that goes in martial arts. But with the online, you don't get that, because what you do is you create content that attracts your ideal person. They engage with their content and then they feed back to you about how it affected them and what they'd like to see next. So, you know, running a martial arts school to find like your star players is kind of inefficient in a sense, isn't it? Because
that makes sense. Yeah,
you get thousands of people through, and we know the quit rate in martial arts is really high during the first 3 months. So, you know, you might have these star people who come in and they just quit because someone said something to them in the class, or they didn't like the way they were taught, or, you know. And the good thing about online is because you create so much content and people find it, the people who are attracted to what you're doing, the way you teach, the way you explain stuff, your passion for the subject, they're like your ideal students. But you find them all over the world. It's great, and they feed back to you and they say, you know, positive things about it, how it's improved their classes, how it's improved their teaching, how it's improved their businesses, how it's improved their lives. It is a nice feeling, to be fair. And I just like helping people, really. It doesn't matter what it is with the online or with pad work or whatever, anything. to do with martial arts. I just like helping.
Yep. The only thing I would say, to not push back against that, but to put a wee bit of balance on it, you do sometimes quite often actually, sometimes and quite often, that doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. You'll find that student that maybe you wouldn't have found, you know, like, and you'll have lots of experience about this. Somebody walks in and you would never think they're just so enough, and then you do you know what I mean, a couple of months later they're then flying. But no, for what you said, it makes perfect.
And that type of student is actually the most exciting type of student for me to teach. When I was teaching physical at my school, it was always like the one you wouldn't suspect, you know, the uncoordinated, like gangly person who just couldn't do anything, and you were like, oh, this is going to be hard work. And then, you know, 6 months down the line, they've massively improved, and then they actually turn into a really good martial artist. That's super rewarding. I find the talented ones less rewarding because they have the natural talent, and often people with natural talent don't fully utilize it because it's easy. Because things come too easy, and they're like, you know, this is easy. Why am I doing this? It's too easy. So they tend to quit. But it's the ones, like you say, who maybe struggle in the beginning that are the most rewarding to teach, because they just turn, you know, they blossom like a flower. They turn into something amazing from, you know, something that didn't start that amazing. So that's really nice. Yeah.
There was I don't know why this story resonated there in my head with what you were talking about, or it came about, but we went to, I started running my first school at 16, so I was like really, really young, and the instructor at the time was traveling through from Glasgow and very quickly lost interest, and then he was phoning me and saying, I'm not coming through today, I need you to cover this class. And I was super eager at the time, and then covering the class, eventually it got less and less there, and I was only 16 at the time, but maybe around 17 or 18 or so, I remember us attending the Combat World Championships, or Combat Magazine World Open, maybe it's in Sheffield or somewhere, and I had a super, super talented student. Like, this guy could jump and explode, and he was amazing. And I remember competing against him in the Patterns or Kata division, and him actually beating me in the competition. And this is, when I think back to this, it's absolutely crazy. Almost the very next class, him and his dad, hey, now remember, I was really young, me and Mimmy know what's coming. Him and his dad showed up, and pretty much had a conversation that because he had beaten me at the tournament, there was nothing else I could teach him. And they actually,
I love that.
I mean, when I was 16 or 17, that probably crushed me at the time. I'm in hysterics laughing about it now. But but the thing is, and this maybe relate back to people who you don't expect, I think he went somewhere else for like a year and done nothing with martial arts.
Yeah.
And then, well, whatever I've done, but it's a lot more than what he done. Do you know?
Exactly,
It's so funny looking back that I don't even know why that's relevant. It just came into my head.
Well, that's a great story. It's like, you can't teach me anymore. It would be even better if they said, we're taking over your dojo now because I've beaten you.
Let's have a Cobra Kai style fight off over this. But yeah, so he did, and the dad, and it seemed to be a mutual thing that they thought that because he'd won this tournament, there was nothing else he could learn from me. So
brilliant, love it.
That's that. Right, okay, so we're up to the stage where you have obviously built this successful online platform business now. How does it work? Tell everybody. And I know lots of instructors that know about your stuff. Every time I log on to social media, your advert is the first thing I see. It's an
Sorry.
Instagram feed.
You can ban me and delete me.
Not at all. It's in Facebook feeds. Even when you're scrolling through like numb videos, Matt Chapman pops up. So that's brilliant. It's obviously working. But how does that work? How does your online videos work? And then how does your platform for helping instructors do it work? So there's a fair bit there.
Yeah, it all kind of works the same way. The whole thing with any type of business, whether it's a physical business or an online business, is you need to know who you're targeting, like who's your ideal customer. That's the first thing that you know you should think about. Now, if I was to open a school again, I would not have any kids in my school.
Okay.
I like teaching kids. I would just have like 100 adult students, and I'd aim for a particular demographic of adult student. And the same goes for the online. What I wanted to focus on was helping instructors teach world-class lessons, not necessarily like a beginner how to hold pads. So a lot of my stuff is not particularly beginner friendly. There are some basic courses, but most of it is for instructors to help them improve their lessons, or to add content to the lessons, or variety to the lessons, so that, you know, their students stick around longer and develop into better martial artists. So that was the primary goal. So then I created everything around that ideal martial arts instructor as my kind of perfect person. I created everything around that. So I've used lots of different online platforms over the years to try and put my content on, and started with like YouTube and then ClickFunnels and, you know, all these different platforms, Kajabi and stuff. Found one that I like, which I'm sticking with now. And then basically what I do is I ask my audience, what would you like me to create for you next? So I just go to them and say, thinking of doing this or this, which one would you prefer, or do you have a better idea? They all kind of vote. They give me feedback, and then I build the content for them. So currently I'm on a course that I'm filming at the moment called 100 boxing lesson plans. So it's what it says on the tin. It's 100 lesson plans that they can print out, and 100 videos showing what's in the lesson plans, just on boxing pad drills. So I create that, I build it, I launch it to the audience, and then I say, what do you want to see next? And they go, I want to see this next. So then I build that. Because my martial arts experience is across a lot of styles, I can jump in and out of different styles, because I've done boxing, kickboxing, American style, Muay Thai, Jeet Kune Do, Filipino martial arts, MMA. I can draw from all these different ones and create different courses and products for different groups of people. So I think that's part of the reason why it's been quite successful. However, there are people who just specialize on online courses on boxing, and ones that specialize in Taekwondo, and ones that specialize. So you can just specialize in your particular area. But my particular area of speciality is pad work. So I do all of this, I create all the courses, and then I market them out. And the Facebook thing you're talking about is doing Facebook ads, which is a bit of a nightmare, really. Facebook ads, not easiest thing I've ever learned. I spent about 12 grand on Facebook ads and got like nothing.
Wow.
No results. But I'm stupid, so I kept investing. And then I got some good training from Gordon Bircham and from Swapnil Garg, two of the guys who are really good in Facebook ads, and they helped me understand Facebook ads a lot better. And then I started to make some sales from my Facebook ads. And with a growing business, the smart thing to do is to reinvest the profits that you're making from your sales back into marketing your product, so that you get this cycle, you know, it gets bigger and bigger and faster. What most people do with their business is they make a bit of profit, and then they spend it on a new car, or they spend it on a, you know, extension on the house, or they spend it on, they improve the quality of their life. What I'm trying to do is I try not to spend too much on stuff for me. I try and make the business more successful and bigger and stronger. So if I make profit from Facebook ads, I try and reinvest it into growing the business and Facebook ads. And yeah, I do spend between £3,000 and £5,000 a month on Facebook ads. So quite a hefty amount of money promoting my content. And you're seeing it in the UK, but people are also seeing it all over the US, all over Canada, Australia, Europe. So, and you know, in the grand scheme of things, big companies are spending hundreds of thousands of pounds a day on Facebook ads. So £3,000 is nothing. But in terms of the martial arts industry, spending that amount of money, you know, per month on Facebook ads is quite a lot. And the whole idea is, if I create content that's interesting and engaging, and people are scrolling through board, and they see a cool pad combination, they go, oh, right, cool. Click on that, go through to the website, check out my different courses, find something they like, buy a course, and then I'll message them, you know, through various means and say, what do you want to see next? And then it just continues like that, gets bigger and bigger.
And you also now help instructors do what you're doing. So, and again, you don't. I would like you to explain it, but just to clarify that this isn't. You certainly don't need my podcast as an avenue to advertise what you do, although it may be. But just for interest, because it's an interesting process that you take people through. So if a brand new instructor came to you and said, listen, I want to try and copy what you're doing, that's part of what you do as well, which is to be commended, because you certainly don't hide anything. You're trying to help others all the time. So what's that process like from sort of beginning to end? What do you do for people?
Well, my goal with that is to help instructors, because the instructors that I'd helped before the pandemic, pre-pandemic, all had online courses ready, all had online training ready, were used to filming, editing, lighting, all of that. So they were like, and then when the pandemic hit, they could transition so quick. They were like, okay, you can all have access to this courses, you can, and we'll set up the Zoom. They were ahead of everyone else because they already had this pre-recorded ready content. And I was like, oh, right, we really need to help instructors, with this, because I don't think this is the last pandemic we're going to have. And also, what happens if you get ill and you can't teach your classes, or one of your senior students runs off with half your school, or like all the classic stuff that happens in the martial arts. I was like, I need to help instructors develop another revenue stream that's not physically dependent on them teaching a class, because sometimes the class won't happen, sometimes might not be able to teach, sometimes stuff happens in life. And that was the goal. I wanted to help instructors, because the number one problem with a martial arts business is you have to physically turn up to teach.
Yeah.
Which is great, but the problem is you have to physically turn up to teach. So, if you're not in the mood, or there's a pandemic, or you're injured, or you've got some serious illness, like some cancer or something like that, teaching may not be possible. So how else can you do it? The only way to do it really is either through staff or through online content. So I thought most instructors have staff training their staff handled. They know how to do that.
Yeah.
But they don't have this online income stream. And if they could make an extra 200, 500, £1,000 a month just from online content, that'd be really useful.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Grow and scale. So started coaching people on this and trying to help them learn how to do it. And the process is exactly the same process that I started with, which is, who's your ideal person that you want to create content for? What type of content do they need or want in their lives? Create a little course so that they can test you out and see if there's the relationship between you, and if it works for them. Offer that little course, ask them what they want to see next, what's the next step they want to see, create a bigger course or platform, and then just continue to do that, get feedback and create more. So for me, the smart thing for instructors to do is to do two groups of people simultaneous. They create content for their own students that they then repackage for other people that they around the world who are not their students. So generally I advise most instructors to ask their students what they're struggling with, and I found the three biggest things they're struggling with is forms, stretching, and sparring across multiple martial arts styles. I would say ask your students what they're struggling with, get feedback from them, create an online course, very short 45-minute online course about that problem and how to solve it. Then sell it back to your students. So you start to generate some income from your own students, and you're starting to train your students to access online resources and use the online resources. And then edit the content of that course or improve it to market it out to other people who are, like your students, but not in your town or your area. They're on the web. Start generating sales that way, get feedback from both groups, start creating more content.
There's three people that I want to mention. One of who I know was dead against this. All three are sort of really big names. All three have been on the podcast before. One of them's Bob Breen, who was actually the last episode.
Cool.
Just before, and you'll be the next one. But one of them was dead against online, and we can maybe have a wee chat about the other two. And the reason why I want to talk about this is I feel that part of our, not just as an instructor, but part of the thing we're supposed to be learning as martial artists is, Bruce Lee, be like water. My own Grandmaster Cho, always talks about flexibility in body, but also in mind. Anybody who's anybody in martial arts always talks about this ability to change and go with the flow type thing. So Chris Credelli was the first one who's doing a lot of online stuff now. Now, when he was on the podcast, maybe 8 or 9 months ago now, actually, Chris had said, I'm against this. I was totally against this. And now everything you've just said, he pretty much agreed with, and that I'm actually, what a difference this is making.
Yeah.
Steve Rowe, who I know you helped, and Steve was on the podcast as well, and then Bob Breen. So you're talking about 3 of the most well-known and well-respected martial artists in the UK. Let's talk a wee bit about that. Just not just about those 3, but about any martial artist or any instructor, because this is your gig. It's about taking maybe people that are staunch believers in the old-fashioned way and getting us to the modern world. We should all have that flexibility of mind, surely, but some people don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's just your choices. Look, your traditionalists who believe that you cannot learn online are entitled to their opinion, and that's fine.
Yep.
They're teaching their dojos, and they won't teach anyone outside of their dojo. That's cool. It doesn't, have any effect on me, and that's it. But I think they're kind of missing a trick slightly. It's not that online training will replace physical training. It cannot replace physical training. You can't watch a video about holding pads and then get better at pads without getting with a partner and then drilling the pad work, right? Same with martial arts. So it's not to replace it, it's to support it. It could be 5% of what you do and 95% is physical in the dojo.
Yeah.
Or it could be 10% or 20%, but it's not ever going to be 100%. We're not in the Matrix where you can get downloaded and learn Kung Fu through the back of your skull and then you can physically do it. You do actually have to watch the video, get up and go and train with someone to improve your skills. So I think it's entirely up to people. I understand where they're coming from, but I think they think it's a replacement for physical training, and it's so not a replacement. It's just a way of supporting what you're physically doing with a little bit of instructional content or detail that maybe you haven't. And then once you've watched it, the idea is you get up, go to your training zone, and then train it for a couple of hours, and look, it's got better. So I understand. It doesn't really bother me. I'm very thick-skinned. I'm like, it's not for you. It's not for you. I can't force you to, change your ways. I mean, one of the things I would say is I kind of believe there's an element of fear in there.
Okay.
And I might be wrong, and obviously people can tell me, but I kind of feel like either they're intimidated by the tech or they have imposter syndrome and they don't want to put themselves out there for negative criticism, or I just get the people who I've met who are really, really, really anti-online. I can feel that part of that is a fear thing, or also maybe it's a threat that, they have their body of students that respect, revere, and pay them. And then some muppet like me online is making videos, and then their students are watching those videos and going, "Hey, sensei, have you seen this Matt guy? He's good at pads. Can we try some of his drills?" For them, that's like, no, that's disaster. So they might be protecting their bubble, protecting themselves, their reputation, and also possibly their income stream, or just who they are. They're just protecting it, and they don't want that stuff coming in from the outside. And I kind of get that, because there is a lot of random crap online for any type of martial arts. Some people who are teaching online maybe don't have the best skills. So I totally get that, but the best always kind of rises to the top anyway. Cream rises to the top. And also, people are smarter now. They understand that if they watch this video and it doesn't seem right, they watch another video and they get a better impression. People are constantly researching and learning, and I think if you try and resist this too much, it's a problem. Also, from a perspective of, you have your students and you say to your students, you must never watch YouTube because it's not correct. But you know they're at home on YouTube, like watching all these videos about the techniques you're teaching in your class. Now, why not instead create online content for your students that teaches them your way, your correct way, that you want them to see, so that you can say to your students, look, the stuff on YouTube's okay, but it's not exactly how I want it taught. Check out our online courses, then you can get it exactly how I want to teach. And the other reason I think, speaking to Steve Rowe about this, is legacy of a martial artist is that we've spent 20, 30, 40, 50 years training in martial arts, and we have developed our own interpretations, our own personality, our own way of explaining things, our own way of moving our bodies, our own way of communicating. That's going to die and disappear as soon as you die. You know, as soon as you're gone, that is literally gone. It's gone forever. It will never be repeated because no one's going to be like you and had your experiences. Personally, selfishly, I'd like to preserve my legacy as a martial artist. Of, you know, I've been training since I was 10. So if I die at 90, hopefully, I'll have 80 years worth of experience. And if I don't digitally record that, that's gone. Now, people often say, yeah, but your students will carry on your name. No, what they will do is take the techniques that you've taught them and make them their own and take it on a totally different journey and a totally different way, you know, and what you were teaching to them 10 years ago will be different by that point. So from a selfish point of view, and also from a legacy point of view, if someone who's invested their entire life into a particular martial art, I think it's very intelligent to record everything, your development. I wish I'd record myself when I was 10, riding about on a horseback, shooting bows and arrows, all the way up to today. Because what an amazing like legacy of martial arts for myself, but also for maybe other people who are studying martial arts, but for my kids to watch, you know, when I'm older and gone, they can see the journey that I've gone through, the development of myself. So I think those instructors who are like very, very resistant, I think they're fearful. They're protecting something, maybe doesn't need protecting. And also I think they're missing out on the ability to help thousands of people possibly with their experience, and also missing out on the ability just to have a recorded legacy of what they've done with their life, because otherwise it's just, it disappears.
Yep. It's so funny that you mentioned YouTube there, because I like to think, in fact, no, do you know, I'm confident enough now to say that I'm sort of very open-minded with my students. I was actually getting on to my students last night about not going onto YouTube enough, and we were just talking about try to build I don't think that the students nowadays are as interested in martial arts as what we were. And when I start talking to people of our age, you start thinking, God, I'm getting old now, because I'm talking about back when we were kids. But I don't think they are. I think they come to class 2-3 times a week, maybe, to get their belt. And whereas I was standing in W.H. Smith, this is what I was talking about. I was talking about this to teenage kids last night. Half of them were looking at me as if I was dead.
You were in where? Doing what?
Exactly. And you were reading Combat or Martial Arts Illustrated, like page sort of front to back, and then you were watching Best of the Best and Enter the Dragon and all these movies. So what I was trying to do was encourage, and I do try and do this, to say, look, this is a technique I picked up from this guy. I want you to go and watch his fight on YouTube or whatever. Here's a wee bit of groundwork we're practicing, and I got this from. And again, I'm putting this podcast out publicly so people can come back and say, no, he doesn't. But I know that I do. I'm as open as I can be with people. I'm trying my best to encourage it even more. That's got to be the right thing, surely. It's got to be to open up the student's mind like that.
Yeah, but a lot of instructors are not are very fearful. So unfortunately, part of the negative side of martial arts is instructors who control their students to the point where they make themselves a demigod. And, you know, and when you get to that point where your ego is so attached to your students' approval, respect, and reverence, you'll shut down, you'll shut ranks, and it's like, nope, you can't study with this person, and you shouldn't be on YouTube, and you're not allowed to watch the UFC because it's not real martial arts. And so that's part of the negative part of martial arts, unfortunately, is people do create little clans, little cliques, little, you know, places like that, and they protect them because it's once again, coming back to why people start martial arts, I think many people start martial arts because they have a lack of self-belief, self-respect, self-love, or approval.
Yep.
Certainly why I started martial arts, for those reasons.
Yeah, I hear you.
But not like I'm saying to other people, yeah, you're a bunch of idiots. It's like, that's why I started. I was missing that confidence in myself and belief in myself. And then, you know, as you get to be an instructor, you get all these people standing in lines, like bowing to you, and they revere you, and they listen to you, and they pay attention to everything you say, and they're very respectful to you. That's very addictive. That's like, oh, right, I'm powerful and respected, and people pay attention to me. And then that can get out of control, I think, where people, like, you know, you stop being so interested in their development as a martial artist, as an individual, and more interested in protecting your group from outside influence, so that you keep all that attention. We all know it's part of martial arts, and you know, it's keeping that balance, I think. So I think that's possibly part of the problem, that people are just, you know, they've got this respect from their group of 50, 100 students, and they just don't want any outside influence affecting that, because it's so important to their self-esteem that they maintain that.
Yeah.
Which I understand, it's totally cool. But the question is, are you motivated by protecting yourself, or are you interested in developing your students to the best of their abilities? So one of the things that I always used to say to my students is, like, if we had a student who had outgrown us in terms of what we could teach them, we'd always refer them on to other people. We didn't want to try and keep hold of them because they were ours, or keep hold of them because they were paying us. It was always like, we've taken you as far along this journey as you can. Go and see this guy. They're the next step for you. And I know a lot of instructors don't do that because they're protecting.
I don't think I've ever taught axe kick in class without sending people to watch Andy Hug videos on YouTube. Yeah, I know. And I think a lot of my style is quite self-deprecating as well. I think that's always maybe a good place to start, because then people don't get disappointed in you so much.
No, you should be proud of yourself.
No, I absolutely am. But again, I just know that I know that you're spot on. I know you're spot on. Whereas it just would never occur to me to say, right, listen, guys, tonight we're going to work on dropping that front leg axe kick, following up with the right hand. Go show me a better example of that, those two techniques, than Andy Hug. There's never been. That axe kick comes from where it comes from.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But I get annoyed to the other extreme, that I know for a fact that most of the students aren't going away and watching that video. And that's
the point that I was mentioning earlier on about finding your ideal customer. Because if I say to my group online, look, here's me teaching axe kick, and if you want to check out Andy Hood's axe kick, I can put a video of Andy Hood's axe kick underneath my video. And also the people that I'm attracting are really into it. Like, they're not, because my courses are quite expensive, they're not dabbling, they're not dabblers, they're like instructors who are into it. So I've managed to like bring these 10,000 odd instructors together because they're passionate about pad work and training and martial arts and just in general. So that's the advantage of this. Like you're saying to your students, go and check it out, and they're like, yeah, sure. I'm going to be watching like gaming when I get home on YouTube. Whereas because I've attracted my ideal customer and they're all in the same place, I know that they will action that. You know, if I recommend something that's going to be good for their development, they're very likely to do it because they're that passionate about it. And that's the advantage of an online business, is you can, you know, there's 6-7 billion people in the world. Out of those, there's got to be 500,000 million people who are really, really into what you're into. So you just need to find them.
Yeah. I've got one more question, Matt, before you go. But just when you said that, if you're a martial arts instructor and you're willing to put a video of your axe kick directly above a video of Andy Hug's axe,
yes,
salute you, sir. Because that's a good place to be.
But also, like, it's that same thing. Like, my axe kick is not as good as Andy Hug's. Not many people will be ever as good as Andy Hug's, but I can refer them to someone who's more, you know, who's better, and I'm not afraid of doing that. So I'm not like, doesn't affect me because my axe kick is not as good as Andy Hug's. I'm trying to help the end person, the student, get better, so you take them where they need to go.
I'm hoping that by the time they watch it on YouTube, their memory of my axe kick. Kareem's axe kick was kind of like that. And that's how they remember it, but I don't think that happens either. Right, okay. Where are we heading? And I know that's a big question that we're going to finish on, but we're coming out. I've said this a number of times in the podcast, and every time I say it, I regret saying it because I think I'm causing. I think I'm saying it, and then the world's going in a completely different direction. But I'm more confident today to say we're coming out of this eventually. It looks as if we're getting out the other end. So, where are we heading? Are you confident that more people may be listening to this podcast or all the other avenues that you have at the moment are going to get on board? Do you think? I know you said at the beginning that you were a wee bit worried that instructors would kind of dump it really quickly. Where are we going to be in 5 years, for example, if we don't get locked back down and there's no more pandemics? Do you think martial arts will just fall back to where it was, or do you think this is going to be a good kick in the backside and pushes on a wee bit?
Well, honestly, I think we'll fall back to where we were because because we're traditionalists, and traditionalists don't move forward. They don't, they're the word traditionalist means we're holding on to tradition. We're sitting in the past. So I kind of think that we'll just go back to what we were doing, and it will be the same as it ever was. Some people will like push more online content out and start trying to build, an online part of their martial arts school, which would be a very, very smart thing to do, even if there's never another pandemic. But what I think is personally going to happen is we're going to have more pandemics. And I think lockdowns are going to be longer and more severe. So my request for people is to prep, like be a prepper, like the people who live in bunkers and have all that stuff stored away. Maybe not that type of prep. Don't start storing toilet rolls in your attic. But I would be prepping for your business, like being closed for like a year, for example, just a whole solid year, not open. Because I think this thing has set a precedent with governments and with those in control that, something happens again, COVID 20 or 21 happens, they'll just shut down and they'll just shut everything down. And how are you going to continue to run your business, bring in income to your business? And also, like, what will happen is countries may shut down. So the advantage I've got with an online business is, right, the UK is in lockdown, but I can still market in Canada and Australia and the US, which is open. So my business doesn't get affected by regional or geographical lockdowns necessarily, unless the whole world's locked down. That's such a strength, that
for sure.
If all the martial arts schools in the UK were shut for an entire year, how, and you're trying to teach your students on Zoom, but wouldn't you also like have a few thousand people dotted around the world that you could create content for, sell courses for, do live workshops for, and bring in these extra streams of income and just help more people? You can just help way more people than you can in your town. So I honestly think that they're going to just go back to how things were, which is great. It works. It's good. But in the back of their mind, I think you need to be thinking about, what happens if there's another pandemic and it's a more lethal one. What they're willing to lock down now for 5 months. They will do it for longer if they have to. You understand why they have to. What insurance have you got in place if your school's shut for a year? Like, what are you building now so that when this happens in 3 years' time and your school's shut for a whole year or longer, that you have, online content you can give straight to your students. You have online courses that you could sell to countries that aren't locked down, or you've built an international audience that's not dependent on your geographic location. So I'm worried, and this is why I try and help so much with the industry and just help people like understand that this is not a negative thing, it's a positive thing. It's only a strength. It can only help you. It can only make your business better if you have an online element to your business as well as the physical element. So I just keep knocking on the door and saying the same thing and just talking, and people are like, oh, Matt's talking about online again, how boring. But you know, I think it's important.
I think I'm not willing to end the podcast on you saying, oh, there's going to be more pandemics. I
Brilliant.
push back on that just ever so slightly, because I'm a wee bit more optimistic that I can't let myself believe that as instructors and to maintain that relationship with our students that we don't. Do you know, I'm struggling to disagree with you here. I want us to see that.
But the positive is that this is a warning shot across the bows. This is like, you know, this has happened. Who would have believed 2 years ago that like whole countries would be shut down and, you know, businesses would be closed and not allowed to open and fined if they did open? If we told this a few years ago, we've been called like quacks and crazies and, you know, overreacting and imagining things. So it's happened. And we've survived, and some places haven't survived. That's the thing. Some places, some business, lots of businesses have gone out of business, and some martial arts schools have gone out of business. So it's a warning shot, and with a warning shot, it should be like, oh, okay, now I need to adapt what I'm doing. So it's like you're sparring, and someone almost gets you with a head kick. You're like, oh, that was close. Then more aware that threat, right? So just be more aware of it and start taking daily steps over the next few years to just protect yourself. So one of the things I think all businesses should have is an emergency fund. So I used to believe that you should have 6 months money saved up that you never spend. There's for emergencies, such as if your business shuts down. But now I think you really need a year's worth of income. A year's worth of all your rates, your rent, your bills, your staffing costs, you know, everything saved that you never touch. Now, I've got this, and I recommend that everyone has this. It's such a comforting feeling knowing that you've got all your bills covered, everything covered for a whole year before you even need to worry about anything. And because a lot of instructors don't think like that, they don't have an emergency fund, then when the government shuts down your business, you're like, oh, I can't make any money, and and it's really stressful, and it's you know, it kicks off your adrenaline, and you can't sleep, and you're stressed, and you're overwhelmed, and you know, you get, and you make reactions that are wrong because you're too stressed out. First thing, every instructor here should be starting to put money away monthly into an emergency fund that they never touch. They don't buy a new car with, they don't go to a holiday in the Maldives. They put away the 20-30 grand that they need to keep their business running for a year. They just put it away and they never touch it. And just having that money just sitting there, just doing nothing, just means that when these things happen, you don't freak out, and you're just like, I've got my safety net, I'm all right, I can still teach online, I can still create online courses, I can still do what I do, and I know I'm going to be safe for a year. So I think that's more of a positive ending. Start putting away a percentage of the money that you make every month into an emergency fund and never touch it.
Yep. The very last thing I'll say before I let you go is that this podcast probably would never have started if it wasn't for the pandemic, because it's been something that's been in my head for years and years now. And then conversations like this has been a genuine sort of passion that I've managed to get off the ground, and conversations with people like yourself. Like, I've absolutely loved this conversation. It's like the dream thing to be doing for me, to be talking to people like Bob Breen, Steve Rowe. I mean, you name it. It's been wonderful. So that's me sort of getting to saying to you, thank you, Matt, for coming on. And yeah, I've loved it. I've had a great time this morning.
And me, it's good chatting with you. It's been really nice and conversational. Sometimes, like, you go on podcasts and it's a bit like they ask you a question and they just stare at you, but you've been really chatty, and like it's been fun. And you obviously have a talent for this, which is why, you know, one of the good things about the pandemic is it gave us free time to start exploring different things that maybe we wouldn't have done before because we were so busy running schools, living our lives. So, you know, we've got to take the positive out of this pandemic situation. And, you know, you've created something that's really, really cool. So congratulations.
Okay. Matt Chapman, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, buddy. All right. Take care. Thank you. Take care, buddy.